What's up, everybody? So I'm going to walk through this app that I built called Favorite Movies. It's where you can save and rate your favorite movies. Pretty simple app. I'm going to walk through it, how it works, some of the key things that I learned, specifically around password security, database design, and API integration. Let's get into it. So this is my homepage. I have a register and I have a login, and this is locally. So I'm used to localhost. Let me go ahead and make an account real quick. So I'm just xgmail.com. All right. So now I have this. It's just going to give me that I got a bad password. And then here's the basically like what you're first directed to. It's going to show a search bar where you can search your movies. And then this is also uses session cookies. So if I reload, it won't log me out. There's a logout button up here. And this is connected to the movie database API. So it will pull movies that are on this database. And it's just super up to date. So I can search literally anything, Inception. It will show up here. I can give it a review, great movie, give it a rating, and I can add that movie. Boom, there you have it. You can see it. And then if I go to another one, Shrek, bam, right there, great. Add a rating. I can also go ahead and edit and delete. So if I want to say, never mind, this sucks, and then give it like a 2, all I have to do is hit add movie again, and it will edit it. Never mind, rating 2. And I can also go ahead and delete if I want to. Here we go. If I refresh, it saves it because it's connected to a database. Awesome. That's pretty much it for the app. And next bit, I'm going to go into the code. Now that I've shown you how it works, let me go through the database connection, how I handled password security, and the movie API. All right, now into the fun stuff. This is my backend. And at the top here, we'll be looking at some of my key libraries that I used. So I have body parser, which is a middleware. PG is for my PostgreSQL connection. Axios for making requests. And Bcrypt is for hashing passwords. And of course, I have a express session for like creating the session cookies. So now I've gone over some of that. Let me go down to the database connection. That's something that's pretty important that I wanted to highlight. This paragraph here is how you connect to Postgres. See how I'm using .env to protect sensitive information. It's best practice to keep sensitive stuff out of your code. When you go to commit to GitHub, you can use a git ignore file, and you can list your .env file. I won't click on it because it will expose all my stuff, but that's generally best practice. Next, I want to go into the session middleware. So that's this right here. This keeps users logged in as they move around the app, and it creates a cookie that tracks who they are. All right, onto a part of the project that I think I learned the most from. This was the register route, as you can see here. And the thing that I learned, when someone signs up, right, you never want to store their password in plain text. You want to do something in the password. So if someone looked at your database, they wouldn't see a bunch of plain text passwords with their users attached to it. That would be a recipe for disasters because, yeah, it's just security 101 at that point. So what we do here is we hash the passwords using these 2 lines right here. We use Bcrypt for this, which is a library that I went over previously. Bcrypt takes in the password and a specified number of salt rounds. So in this case, it's 10. I'm pretty sure I set that up here. Yeah, number of salt rounds is right here. So we have the number of salt rounds. And just a quick overview of what salt rounds are. So when you hash a password, if 2 passwords are the same, right? They're both the same. Let's say I have 12345, 12345, 2 passwords, 2 different users. If you hash those, you run it through an algorithm, they would come out looking the exact same because you run it through the same algorithm. If you're salting the password, you add like random characters onto the end of it, and then you hash that. And the random characters, the salt, would be different for each password. So the hashes at the end of it would be completely different from each other. This is how you prevent people from seeing like that 2 users have the exact same passwords. It's an important part of like hashing and just like basic user protecting user information stuff. So here we also insert into the database. And another thing to mention here is preventing SQL injection attacks. Here we use what's called a parameterized query. So we have the 1 and the 2 there. And so never just stick the user's, like the input directly into an SQL string, because that's what allows people to do SQL injection attacks. So always do like $. The email is the first one, and then hash is the second one. And that's what's going into our database. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for registration. Next, I'll go into login. Now for a pretty simple part of our project, which is just the login. So I have the email and the password. These two are what we get from our AJS file when a user goes to hit login. What we do is we query our database and we find the users where the email is equal to the email that was inputted in here. And then if a user does exist, if we do find an email in our database, then they will continue with finding the password, takes the password, the hash password from the database, and it runs it through Bcrypt. What Bcrypt does is compare it. So it compares the two. That's its own thing. If you look at the documentation, you can read up on that. I won't go into too much details, but Bcrypt compares the password that's in the database that's already hashed and the plain text password that the user inputs. And at that point, it will just create a session ID and then it redirects you to the new movie page. That's pretty much it for the login. This is my add movie route. So we have what we're getting from the JS file, which is the normal title. We're cleaning the title and saving it into a variable called movie title. That way, when we go to make our request using Axios, we don't have like some weird spacing and stuff that messes up the request. So using Axios, we make the request. We use our API key. That's a way to kind of authorize yourself with the API itself. A lot of APIs, they need you to have an API key in order to access the information that they're making available. So that's why you need that. This takes the URL, the endpoint we want to target, and then this is kind of just authentication, and we're querying for the movie title that we want. This just basically takes the information that we get back, checks it. This is whether or not we found a movie. So if there was no movie, no selected movie, then we run movie not found, and then else we're going to return this. So for this project, I got to experiment and learn how to use Postman. Postman is a really good tool when dealing with any kind of API. It's a good way before you build out anything to learn how to make requests to an API and kind of figure out like what you're going to get back. So I would highly recommend Postman. It helped me a lot in this project. The submit route is interesting because I had to handle two different cases, editing and creating a new movie for people to add. So here is pretty basic. We go through the request for the movie name. We got all this information, the review, the rating, the edit. And what we do here is what's interesting. This is kind of what I had the most trouble with when I was building this out. So when edit data is true, we have a variable edit data. When that button is clicked, it's true. So we're editing it. And we want to update our movie database. So at that point, we query our database and we update the movies. We set it equal to the review, the rating, the session, and the movie. And then we redirect. And then if we're not editing, then we're making a new movie. If edit is set to false, then you're inserting into the movie database. So you're inserting the movie title, the poster path, the session, and the review and the rating. So those are the two different ways I had to handle this submit route. And that was kind of a more challenging part of this project for sure. All right, for the final two routes, I have the edit and delete. Edit is really straightforward. You're doing the same thing we're doing in submit, pulls up the same page and everything, and you're just changing the information. And then hitting submit again. So that's pretty straightforward. Delete is also straightforward, just taking the item to delete because all of them have an ID. So you're grabbing the ID and you're deleting in the database from where the name is equal to that, the item to delete. And that's pretty much it for that. Down here I have, this is always a good thing to have in your project so you know your server is running. Then the app.listen, and that's pretty much it. EJS files are pretty interesting. I went from going from like CSS, JavaScript, HTML to EJS. This was a project I built in a while ago, not that long, but like July, so a couple months back. And that was kind of what I did in between going from that and React. So I went to EJS was kind of like my middle ground. And this was honestly a pretty good way to get some core concepts across. Like as you can see here, where was it? I used for each to render each of the movies. You have all this. It's pretty much mostly just HTML, and then anything where it's this is some JavaScript. So that was pretty interesting to learn. I know EJS is not very popular, but I feel like it was a pretty good as like for my learning. That brings me to the end of this video. If you follow along all the way through it, I really appreciate it. Hopefully you learned some things. Some major things to reiterate. I learned kind of hashing with Bcrypt, never store in plain text, use environment variables for anything sensitive, use parameterized queries so you avoid SQL injection attacks. And honestly, just working with the real database in this project, figuring out the structure of like tables and multi-user apps was super helpful. So this was my first full stack application. I didn't know React or anything before this. I generally didn't even know what Postman was. So learning all that stuff was incredibly useful. And yeah, I'll have a couple of videos coming up that should be even more interesting. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching.